I'll start bringing people in here in just a second.
Hello, everybody. How you doing? I see Liz, Kathy, Michael.
Good evening.
Good evening. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. So from council, I see Kathy, Liz, and Michael. So hopefully we'll wait a little bit longer to get everybody, see if anyone else is coming. I didn't get a list of who all was attending, so we'll give a couple more, a minute or two here, then we'll get going. We'll try to start as close as possible on time.
Councilman Brennan, I know Councilman Winarski and Brzezinski were having some tech issues, so I'm trying to work them through that.
Okay.
And if I can't work them through it, I'll just throw them the YouTube link so they can see the presentation.
Okay.
I see Michael's joined us.
Let's give it one more minute, and we'll start.
Dave?
Yes.
Something happened to my screen. I can only see Kathy Rosdick, and then the rest of my screen says, click open Zoom meetings on the dialogue shown by your browser. If you don't see a dialogue.
Just click yes, Kathy, and you should be able to see the presentation. Or if you're using your mobile device, you can just rotate your phone.
So I can click launch meeting then?
I think that would be fine. If it kicks you out, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Just log back in.
Okay.
I thought that was going to happen.
So it's 5:35. So let's we'll get started. We do have City Council members, Kathy Schaaf, Liz Allen, and Michael Keys on. Is there anyone else? I think that's all I see in the listing here. And we'll see if the other members are able to join. Hopefully they are able to join. But yeah, so we're here tonight to discuss the Historic Preservation Task Force and also the work that we've been doing and present the final report. I want to thank everyone for being involved in this past year. I know there's been a lot of discussion and updates at the council meetings. There's been a lot of interest as we're putting the preservation plan forward. So I want to thank all council for your participation and for, of course, being here tonight. We had a prior presentation to give an update back in May of this last year. I think that went well. I think council thought we were going in the right direction. So now we're here to give the final report, a draft. We'll make any updates if anything needs revised, but a council report to update council and get any thoughts that you may have. So it hasn't been quite our 2 years yet. It was July when the 2 years will actually commence. But we're here tonight to give the final report, and we're excited to move forward. And there's been a lot of great work in the report. I'm not sure if anyone's got a chance to look at the draft, but all the participants that were involved on the task force are in the report, and also the local advisory committee members are also there. So I want to thank them all, especially Kathy Rosdick for all the time you put to help pull this together and help lead this group through a lot of tough work that we've done. And there's been a lot of great work from our committee. So the agenda tonight is to give an overview of the plan and process, then to talk about the certified local government designation, which we have applied for, and then the historic review committee that's in discussion in the work. We just had a public hearing this past week, and then we'll have a closing and any type of questions. Of course, questions are available to be answered throughout the presentation. It's more of a discussion. So, but if there's anything at the end, we could entertain those at the end. So I think for the overview of the plan, I don't know if it wants to be a tag team with Kathy and Emily. Eloy, our secretary of our committee, you want to give the introduction?
Kathy Schaaf had a question. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. Can you make the screen bigger on your share? Thank you.
Yeah. So I was going to let Emily kind of go through this. I pulled it up on my screen just so we had it available. And one of the reasons I sort of wanted Emily, because she has done the lion's share of putting all of the work that's happened over the past almost 2 years now into what is really an excellent document. And I think really portrays all of the effort and all the hours that this team, that essentially that council and mayor put together, has done over the short amount of time that we've been here. I can't believe it's almost been 2 years since all this began. So I really wanted to showcase Emily's work and hard work. And like I said, I wasn't sure she was going to be able to take all the pieces and parts that we had scraped together and shown from our work and put it into a comprehensive and meaningful document, but she certainly has done that. So many kudos to her on being able to make sense of all this stuff that we've done. So with that, Emily, if you want to, did we just lose Emily? No. Did we just lose her? No, she's still here.
I don't see her on the participant list.
I don't either. All right, well.
I guess you're on,
I think Emily
Kathy.
might have gotten cold feet and just. All right, well, hopefully she'll pop back on, but I don't want to hold anything up. So everyone knows that this is the, Emily was able to put all this together. And the document, although it's 66 pages, most of the plan is not that not that intensive. As an appendix, we've put this certified local government. Make text bigger. Okay, can you not see any of this? Tell me when it actually becomes something that you can see. I'm getting some text. I can't, everyone's on mute, so if you can't see it, I can't hear you. Is this?
I could see it fine. I don't know if anyone else is good.
Okay, I think Emily's coming back on. So as she's getting reconnected, she's probably having some connection issues. So as Emily's getting reconnected, just to give you a layout. So the first couple of pages is really the bulk of the plan, and it goes through the whole process from start to finish. The executive summary, if you do get a chance, that's really can give you a nice overview of all of the work, the recommendations, and why this task force and this team are providing the level of guidance and the recommendations for council's action. So the executive summary does a nice job of doing that and gives the background. But the bulk of the document is really in these appendices. So you have in one location, the zoning ordinance amendment, which you've seen because it was presented to you at a public hearing last week. You have the entire CLG application and the CLG grant application, as well as a sample of the survey that we were able to put together. So all of that is in one location, but you can see that the plan itself is only about 15 pages. So it is a very manageable and consumable product, and we wanted to make sure we kept it that way. So just to go through a little bit of the plan, you can see the timeline. The timeline, as Councilman Brennan mentioned, we started officially in March of 2019, but things didn't get underway until July. So July is really our target date of when we were actually able to meet. And so that was created by you by resolution by council, and we were given 2 years to complete the work. 7 members were appointed, all selected by the mayor and city council, with the charge of creating next steps or this plan. And that's what you have before you. Just to give you a little background on the task force members, we are all still intact except Judge Kelly. When the pandemic hit, she had a number of issues trying to sort of manage her work, manage her home life under what was, pretty harsh times for all of us. So she had to step off, and we certainly understand that. But we were able to continue the work. We had a number of different city staff who came in and out of the process. Jake Welsh, our zoning officer, Jenna Gorney was the assistant zoning officer at the time that this was started. Both of them were early participants in the task force and as you can see, that was very much needed because this is a zoning, this can be very much a zoning issue. So since we did create the first step was sort of that creation of the zoning amendment, it was good planning that we actually had our zoning officers at the table. Liz Allen as our liaison, Bill Callahan, who I don't think is on here, but he certainly did get in the invitation. You've seen him before, and he has been a very, very much a participant at almost every task force meeting, if not more, helping us. PA SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office, has given us an incredible amount of support and guidance. He is here. So Bill is here somewhere. So we give a lot of credit to them. And then, of course, the mayor and Chief of Staff Renee Lamus has been probably attending almost all the task force members. So we do have, it looks like we have almost all of our members here now, which is fantastic. And then we also have been supported by, if you may remember, we had an intern last summer of 2019, Paul Kinsella, And he actually helped support the launching of the task force. So a lot of people, and Tessa Ferraro now, who is our assistant zoning officer, is participating. Erin Carey, our neighborhood planner, and Megan Bennett, who is our Vista. Actually the city engineer had been on our task force on and off originally, because he has a love for historic buildings. So that has, again, we've had many people come in and out of the task force, and we've also done a lot of outreach. As you can see, I'll try to zoom out a little bit. There are 4 goals. These were established by the task force. After much due diligence, we spent a couple of meetings really focus on what we felt based on our experience with Erie and our roles on the task force, what we felt were really the most pertinent things that we wanted to achieve out of the work. And so these are the 4 guiding goals that were established. In order to get to this point, the task force looked at all of the relevant planning related documents that existed. The state of Pennsylvania had completed their sort of a comprehensive plan on preservation, which we reviewed and incorporated the guidance from that. This county had recently completed a cultural heritage plan, so we referred to that, and also Erie refocused. And then, yeah, I see that, Renee. Thanks. Renee's texted me and let me know Bill's on. I see Bill now. So thanks, Renee. So anyway, that informed really the goals that you see here. And that was, and they, just to go over them briefly, we wanted to make historic preservation much more accessible to property owners. So whatever comes out of this work, how do we actually get it in the hands and make it as valuable as possible for the people who need it the most, which are the people who own our historic buildings now or may own them in the future. And then the people who are impacted by those could be people who live in them but don't own them, who own businesses within historic properties. So we wanted it to be accessible. In order to do that, it had to be at the local level. So we thought, how do we establish a framework that puts historic preservation on the ground in Erie? We have some great organizations like Preservation Erie that's kind of been out there doing this, but we thought the city really needed to sort of step up and be sort of that local conduit. They needed to take an active role in historic preservation in order to make it much more accessible. This is the place where people come in for building permits. This is the go-to place for things like zoning, anything that impacts how we develop our properties. The city's almost the first step in that process. So it made sense that the city become that conduit. And you'll see that represented in what has been brought before you as recommendations and become a certified local government. The CLG that we're moving to become is in direct relation to putting the city in the best position possible to provide those resources for historic property owners and people who love historic buildings.
Can I interject one item? One thing I wanted to mention is that, the city never had a preservation plan. So that's one thing of how this came about is there was certain things that have occurred in the past, like there was a historic preservation chapter created in the ordinance, and there's been other efforts to discuss preservation, but there was never a historic preservation plan. So I just wanted to mention that at the beginning is, really we have nothing in place right now. So, this committee was, charged with making this plan and creating a right approach for Erie. That is what we'd like to do. So.
Dave, I was wondering if you could also, maybe this isn't the right time, but if you could also maybe elaborate or emphasize again that it's a plan, because somebody who spoke at the meeting spoke at the meeting, and then I think he also spoke at the public hearing, seemed to think it was only about anti-demolition. So I think that maybe emphasize that it's preservation. And I know that we'll get into this as, Melinda and Kathy and Bill have talked about, preservation works. It's an economic driver. So I don't know if maybe we'll do that later on, but
yeah,
right at the get-go, we need to clarify that this is more than saying, don't tear something down. It's how do we build up and preserve and get those resources. I know we'll get into that, but it just, I felt like it was kind of summed up in a way that wasn't really what our goal. We have concerns about, things being torn down when they could possibly be reused or repurposed or rehab. So
yeah, that's a good point, Liz. That is important. But I know Kathy could probably say it better than me. But yeah, this is a plan. It's an approach from many angles of how historic preservation can help our city, and there is a lot of work ahead with working to get public input. So yeah, this is just a plan of how the city could address preservation and just try to make it to try to look at it from all angles, and it involves everything from seeking assistance for funding where it's possible, seeking assistance for design guidance, seeking other resources. So it's and then also trying to protect our resources. So Kathy could say it better than I, but go ahead, Kathy.
No, you said it just great, okay. Dave. This is a holistic approach. This isn't a silver bullet. It's not just an amendment to the zoning ordinance. It's just not, looking at something regarding demolition. This is giving the city and building a team that will be your guide and your advisors as you continue to move forward with historic preservation. First and foremost, that's exactly what this is. You're building an historic review commission, an HRC, that's going to be your advisor on historic preservation. You're giving them more access to tools and funding by becoming a CLG community. First and foremost, those are the most important things that are coming out of this plan. The zoning amendment is the tool that creates the HRC. You had to create that in policy somewhere, and that was the best place to create it. And it's the zoning amendment that puts you in a position, and the HRC that now puts you in a position to become a CLG. So this is all tied. I kind of wish I had like a little sort of timeline or a little whiteboard that shows how all of these things work together. So it's not just one thing. And I think that's the beauty of what you did when you created the task force. The task force job was to spend the time to say, this can't be just one thing. What is it that we want to make that's sustainable and sets the city up for success? And they came to these conclusions. So everything you're moving forward with now sets you up to do the work that you're going to have to do. And that's when I say we, it's, I say you, the HRC is going to be your workhorse. You're going to give them and say, okay, keep moving this forward. And we'll talk a little bit about what we think the HRC will be doing. But now you've got a sustainable, holistic approach to historic preservation that's come out of this plan. And the beauty of it is because you brought such powerful people to the task force. They weren't about, we're not going to spend 2 years and just give you a plan. We're going to spend 2 years figuring out what it should be, and we're going to start doing it. So they were working the plan as soon as they were coming up with really good ideas that they could all get around. And that's the beauty of the type of work that came out of the task force. So they knew that our neighborhoods are important, that our neighborhoods have unique identities that need to be preserved. And sometimes that preservation is going to come in buildings, and sometimes it's going to become in districts and sites. So it was telling the story of Erie that's so unique to Erie that we thought was the most important thing to do. In order to do that, you have to have this holistic framework, which is what you have, which is what you've been presented in this plan. And so I've kind of just gone over all 4 of those in those few statements. So all 4 of these goals is exactly what I just said. So I don't have to go over. I'm not going to read you the text anyway. That's where we came up with them. This is the method behind the madness that you see. Although I don't think it's that maddening of a plan. It's pretty, like I said, it's pretty consumable. At some point, it's all a blur, right? Because 2020 just kind of threw us all up in our feet over our heads. But at some point, we broke down into subcommittees, and so we had subcommittees working on policy and legislation. And this subcommittee was the one who came up with the idea of let's look at Do we create an historic district or a historic, an ordinance based on the Historic District Act versus the zoning ordinance? So they were the ones going back and forth and saying, what's the best way to do this? Looked at other legislation from other committees or from other communities and came up with what you have on your agenda, which is the amendment to the zoning ordinance. So all of these things happened. We also had I think I missed it. We had another subcommittee that worked on, I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar with Emily's. Anyway, and Emily did a great job. I don't think we'd ever seen this before. The pros and cons of doing a standalone ordinance versus a zoning amendment. So this is, you see how all of this sort of came out of the work. You see all the work synthesized. We also, this is an interesting map. If you get a chance to look at it, I think it came out of Erie Refocus, but it shows you really what the amount and the wealth of historic resources that you already have in the city. That this just shows you the potential of what you can build to sort of maintain the historic integrity of the city. We already have a number of properties that are on the National Register. We have a number of districts that are on the National Register, and then we have a wealth of older, more historic properties and assets scattered really throughout the entire city. It's really quite amazing what we still have intact in most of our neighborhoods. So the other subcommittee, I thought we had it up here, but oh yeah, here's the other subcommittee. The other subcommittee was survey and outreach. So this subcommittee wanted to explore how do we actually do a better job surveying what we have on the ground. Is there a tool? And there's some other reasons why we need to update our surveys. So we actually created a survey 123 tool, and we sent this team, the subcommittee out. They actually did a beta test of the tool. This is very much, some of you have seen our property condition survey. This is the same tool that we use to do the property condition survey. So we sent a team out, and we actually have a map that we beta tested the survey, so they can go out and sort of identify potentially historic buildings. They're automatically mapped, they're put into a GIS system. It needs some work, but that's essentially what this subcommittee worked on. They also did outreach. The subcommittee worked with the Neighborhood Growth Partnership and identified a tool that's being used in Philadelphia called the Neighborhood Toolkit. It was used by Philadelphia to help organize neighborhoods to really come up with what makes their neighborhood special, identify them, and then use this workbook as a way to figure out how best to preserve their neighborhoods. So they found this tool, they took it to the Neighborhood Growth Partnership. There's a lot of support by our neighborhood groups to come up with a tool similar to Erie. So that's what this subcommittee had done. But then they came back together, and there's an example of the toolkit that's from Penn Praxis for Philadelphia. And we think that's a really good next step for our HRC to work on. So coming back together, some of the things, the action items that are already being worked on, you have the amendment to the zoning ordinance that's before you. That's moving forward. You have certified local government status. That application is in. We've gotten some feedback from State Historic Preservation Office of what we need to have in place, and they're working with us. We also have a grant that was only CLG communities are eligible to do or to apply for, that we submitted at the same time. So we need one before the other. Create a historic review commission, which is part and parcel of the zoning amendments. And we already have that as part of our call for applications to find qualified people to fulfill those slots. You absolutely have to have this HRC in place with qualified applicants in order to get, that's another requirement for our CLG status. So that's imperative that we have that. But before you had the amendment to your zoning ordinance, you had no way of creating that commission, but now you do. So that's moving forward. And then as part, the grant that we actually applied for the CLG grant is to create a planner position to support the work of the HRC. And the reason that's so critical is this isn't over when you create the Historic Review Commission. The work is just starting. There is so much work ahead for the city that you need these people in place to do it right. So when we talk about resources almost inevitably mean you need people to do this work. I appreciate Dave giving me kudos for helping and supporting the task force. But I can tell you the amount of work that it's going to take to do this and to do this right. If it was just left on my desk, I should turn my camera around and show you my desk. It's almost as bad as Renee's, but not quite as bad. But it won't get done. I mean, it just won't get done unless you have dedicated staff doing it, and you have to have qualified dedicated staff. This isn't you can't put it on the back of a zoning officer they're doing 7 other different things. You just can't do it and do it right. So to do justice to this work, you have to dedicate resources. And that's why the CLG grant was to help fund the preservation planner that's basically going to build this program for you. Because we're starting from scratch. We've done the work, we've built the framework, we've put the gears in motion, but it's going to be the HRC that's going to be the workhorse, and they need a qualified person to help them do it. So that's why you have, we've again tried to set you up for success, and you see that we applied for the grant to do that. And then the HRC is going to look to find creating historic districts, really designating that overlay district that's part of your zoning amendment, looking for places that they can start designating alongside city council. I just want you to, because I know that was brought up during the public hearing, when the amendment is in place, it doesn't create a zoning overlay anywhere. You have to do that as part of a rezoning. And when you're rezoning property, particularly in this process that's going to be a little bit different, the HRC will actually hold a community meeting at the location that's being designated. So there is certainly a higher level of community engagement that will happen when these districts are designated. And I think that's an important distinction to do. And most of typically when rezonings occur or overlays are put onto property, it's the property owner who's requesting it. It doesn't mean that the city couldn't do it themselves. You always have that power to do that. But most of the time, it's a property owner who's requesting it. So I think it's an important distinction. This isn't something that you're shoving down someone's throat. This gives you a tool by which people who want to preserve their properties has a way of doing that. So that is essentially the work that has been done. You can see that there are some next steps, and these next steps will be done, the recommended next steps, the thought that these next steps will be done by task force members, support by the task force members, as they sort of end out their 2 years. I think a couple of reasons why the people that are on this Zoom call and have been participating is they knew that this wasn't going to be something that wasted their time. They had a begin date and they had an end date. And they also had a huge commitment, because not everyone lives in the city of Erie. They had a huge commitment to do something on behalf of the city of Erie. So I think that was a great sort of a great testament or a great mix of component parts that has given giving the city a plan that is really workable. So they're going to continue to work and support the launching of the HRC, the onboarding of a preservation planner. I think we're getting the grant, but it's depending on our CLG status. There's a lot of work. So the HRC's got to have policies. There's processes that are going to have to be developed. And I think the HRC is going to be in a very good position to onboard, to look at doing the toolkit on behalf of our neighborhood groups. So these are the types of projects that the HRC will be working on, we believe, in the next year. The survey needs some work, but now you've created a commission that's going to do that work for you. So they're going to take the survey, they're going to develop policies for their own and procedures for their own work. They're going to look at issues with our demolition ordinances and coming up with a plan. But another thing that I think is really important is we believe that the next step, even though this is a plan, you really do need a citywide historic preservation plan that looks at what are your assets, that does a deeper dive than what's happened here. This basically is a plan for how you get started. And the HRC, and that's what I would suggest in the first 3 years of their operation, is they actually do a full-fledged historic preservation plan for the city of Erie, because now you've got, again, an agency that's designed, that's been created by you to do that work. So that essentially I think this is a little ambitious, but I appreciate everyone. Everyone wants to keep continuing all of the good work. So we're going to leave it as is, but if another pandemic hits, maybe all of this gets pushed to 2023, but let's hope that doesn't happen. But that's essentially your plan, and the plan of how it was created and the plan moving forward. And with that, Emily, I'm sorry I stole your thunder. We weren't sure we were getting you back on the line, but I did give you many, many kudos before we lost you about how you were able to pull all this together.
Well, thank you, Kathy. No, you did an amazing job. I don't know if anyone can actually hear me now. I did keep cutting in and out there for a while, so sorry about that. But thank you, Kathy. That was a great overview of the report and the next steps to plan for the future. So thank you.
Kathy, just want a couple comments, and we'll have a couple questions from council. But I also wanted to thank you for explaining that so well. And again, not anybody could do what you just did and what you have done for this committee. So we appreciate all your talent and expertise here. But I want to go back. I should have said this in the beginning, but I want to really thank council and the mayor for even getting us here. We wouldn't even be working on this if it wasn't for your work to start this committee, and also Mayor Schember for bringing Kathy into the city, because we've talked about historic preservation in the past on council, and it has really gone nowhere because we haven't had that support. So I really appreciate that. So is there any council questions here? And we'll go on to the next item. We'll try to be quickly go through the agenda here. Any council questions? I see Liz winding up here.
I had one is more of a comment, and then one is probably a comment also. And maybe this is appropriate elsewhere, but I keep thinking back to that public hearing, and as it was going on, I was Googling, and at some point probably do some outreach to let people know that Erie is not unique in doing this, that there are other historic preservation functions in Pennsylvania municipalities. And I know Bill at some point would be able to let people know about that. So, because I was a little alarmed at the sort of the charge that maybe we were charging off into the wilderness and doing something that was odd or not being tried elsewhere. So let's just keep that in mind, that Erie will have its own preservation commission, but we aren't reinventing the wheel, to use a cliche. And I was also thinking about something that as we think about equity issues, I really like Kathy and Emily and the task force for emphasizing the neighborhood aspect of this, because I think sometimes as those of us who've been involved in preservation, we know sometimes it's perceived as, we're grateful for what Tom Hagen is doing, but there's assets in every neighborhood. And when I have been doing, well, not exactly right now in the 25-degree weather, but doing socially distanced walks in a lot of Erie's neighborhoods. And all you have to do is look and see the good bones of more humble places too, which are contributed to the fabric of those communities. So I'm kind of, not to get off track, because there's so much work that you've laid out here, and I really appreciate the fact that we need somebody, because you can't just do it as a volunteer basis. You need the support staff to go in there and do that work. But a couple of years ago, we had Monica Rhodes here, who was involved in doing preservation with at-risk youth, but those were on federal property. So I keep thinking ahead to, you know, the community college. There will be opportunities here, not just to show that preservation works, but possibly to help, you know, the train craftspeople to do some of that work. So that might be kind of a lofty goal, but I just think, as you know, the mayor has often talked about, you know, making, you know, we want an equitable community, so we can just keep that in mind. So it's kind of a different soapbox, but I know it can be done. And if anybody and any place is poised to do it, I think Erie is in a position to be able to do that. So just so people don't think it's just all, you know, restoring the mansions, but if we look at it as neighborhood assets and part of our economic development and neighborhood restoration and rehabilitation, we can help increase that buy-in, I think. So that's
Liz,
my comment. So it's not really a question.
I wanted to at least address your first question, and anyone else could chime in here. But I really think we're Erie's 20 years behind in catching up. Many other communities have been doing this for years. I'm sure Bill Callahan could tell us exactly what has happened in the past, but many cities have done this years ago. They've had a preservation plan. They have a historic overlay district, so forth. So I think we're playing catch up. We're in no way venturing. So that's just my 2 cents on that. And if anyone else has any comments on that. Okay. Well, we'll go to the next item. Again, questions can continue, but the next item on the agenda is the certified local government update. And I don't know if Melinda wants to address that, and maybe Bill could chime in where we need his expertise. Melinda?
So Kathy did such a great job with the introduction and overview with the plan. I think she probably covered quite a bit of content related to the CLG applications, but just to provide some clarity for council members. And I know we've said this before, so this might be repeating information, but again, because as Dave, you've said, there's this perception that you know, or maybe the fact that Erie is a little behind when it comes to historic preservation. We'll repeat anyways. So the Certified Local Government Program, it is a program that is administered by the National Park Service in partnership with all of the state historic preservation offices across the country. So Bill, of course, is here representing the Pennsylvania State Historic Preservation Office. They receive funding to take that, or they receive funding through the CLG program to support cities all across the state that are prioritizing historic preservation, right? So the State Historic Preservation Office provides technical support, but they also take some of those dollars for the Certified Local Government Program to re-grant out to municipalities that have achieved this certified local government status. So when we talk about the applications that have been prepared for the city of Erie, as Kathy eloquently mentioned, there are 2 different applications, right? There's the one application that was submitted to actually achieve or apply for that certified local government status or designation with the PO-SHPO and the National Park Service. And the second application is the application for actually grant dollars that would help support the preservation planner position that we've talked about creating. So 2 separate applications. The grant seeking funds to support the preservation planner position, again, has tentatively been given the green light or the thumbs up, but of course those dollars cannot be officially awarded until the application for the certified local government designation is approved and given the green light. So just wanted to be clear about those two applications and kind of clear with what the certified local government designation means for the city of Erie. At its basics, it means that the city of Erie is prioritizing historic preservation. To achieve that certified local government status, we have to take a number of steps, which includes the Historic Preservation Ordinance and the creation of the Historic Review Commission. And so once we have that, we can apply, the city can apply year after year for funding through the Certified Local Government Program. And what can this funding be used for? It can be used for technical support, right? So writing ordinances, it can be used to support training of city staff and or members of the Historic Review Commission. It can support the preparation of National Register nominations. It can support survey work, all sorts of really good preservation activity at the city. And so I'm not sure what other information to provide. Bill, if I missed anything or misspoke, please chime in. Otherwise, I will simply ask if there's any questions about that information.
If you'd like, I'll give you a quick update, just so it's clear. The only thing really we're prepared to send the certification into the Park Service when the zoning ordinance is passed and the HRC is appointed. Once we have documentation that we can package everything up, it has to go through multiple signatures in my agency, as well as essentially the governor's office and the attorney general. And then it goes to the Park Service, and they just have a couple of weeks to look at it after we get through that process. So we're pretty close. Since I have this opportunity, I just want to, as everyone else has already done, congratulate the mayor and the city council for your thoughtful appointments onto this task force. I have been doing this for a very long time in several different states, and the dedication, the thoughtfulness, the holistic approach that Kathy emphasized, that I think is critical to this whole process, that this group of people have taken to develop this really fantastic document, and this process has been really, it's been a privilege to watch. I mean that. Everybody here has just done a wonderful job. It's been a model process, and frankly, I can't believe 2 years have gone by and how much work has been accomplished in that 2 years. So I congratulate all of you on how far you've come with this. It's really been the quality of work and the quantity that you've developed in this short amount of time has really been impressive. So congratulations to all of you. It's been a privilege to watch you work.
Well, Bill, thank you so much. And again, I don't think we would be here without your input. I mean, you attended all the meetings. You gave us so much good input. I mean, this plan is it wouldn't be there except for a lot of your explanations, a lot of your details. So I thank you, and thank you for all your time of attending the meetings. Is there any other council questions about the certified local government? I know sometimes it's pretty complicated and there's a lot of steps to it, but any general questions before we move on? Nope. Okay. Well, let's move on. The last item we had on our agenda was the suggested work plan for the Historic Review Commission. And I think, Kathy, you were going to lead that off?
Well, I pretty much said it all at the beginning, which I tend to do. I get so excited. You have the next steps that I outlined in looking for historic districts. So the HRC is going to be sort of drumming up support for creation of the overlay district in places that really need it. They're going to be working on the toolkit. First out of the gate, they'll have to have bylaws and policies in place to take in applications. So they've got a lot of work ahead of them. They'll probably, I think it's really important for boards and commissions to create annual work plans. So they'll essentially meet. I think their first meeting is going to be a rigorous one. So they'll have to get up to speed. That's why you have to appoint really knowledgeable people who understand what their role is. It's also important in the way that we developed the guidance for the appointments to the HRC is that you get a broad spectrum of interest coming to the HRC. So you'll want someone who understands historic preservation, who understands architecture, but who also is the voice of reason on the development side. And that's one thing I just wanted to point out before we sort of conclude the meeting, is that your task force members, although they have a strength in historic preservation and an interest in helping the city, they weren't all coming together, and they didn't all have the same opinion about things. So there was a lot of back and forth. Chuck is probably one of the best voices of reason on some of the recommendations, but that's what you need. You don't want everyone to agree. You want that discourse and that discussion to be happening with your advisors. And that's exactly what we'll want to see with the HRC. You want someone who's going to push back and say, hey, how does that impact the future of Erie in a positive way? Is that going to slow progress? What do we feel about that? So you want that back and forth to happen at the advisory at the HRC. And that definitely happened with the task force. So that's why I feel very confident in the work product that is being presented to you tonight, because this isn't, if everyone was in agreement, we probably would have been here a year ago, but that's not at all what happened. We all wanted to take our time and do the work the right way. So that'll be an important piece as we're now getting all the applications in for all of our boards, commissions. Keep that in mind as you're making appointments. You want someone who's going to bring the balances to the work of the commission. So I think that's all I wanted to say. If anyone has any questions.
Great. Well, before we get the questions, I was going to say, I know Chuck Scalise is on the line here, and also Melissa Hake. Any comments, Chuck or Melissa? Again, I want to thank you for all your hard work and participation. Any thoughts before we get the Q&A?
No, it's just been a real pleasure to get this project this far. I mean, as a real estate developer for well over 30 years, it was always frustrating trying to make the balance between preserving Erie's history while finding ways to adapt, structures into a modern use. So these are tools that other developers will be able to use and guide so that we can maintain Erie's historic fabric and be able to tell our story.
Great. Thank you. Melissa, any thoughts? And again, we thank you also. Appreciate it.
Yes, this has been a pleasure working on this task force. So many of us have the same passion with all different backgrounds, and I'm just honored to be a part of it. I think we produce something really great, and I'm excited to see what happens in the future.
Great. Well, any questions from council? I guess this is I think that's all we had to present, and I see Kathy has her hand up. Kathy, anything?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for all your hard work. I think I may have asked this question before. How about the churches? Some of them are definitely historic, and let's just say hypothetically it no longer is able to be a church anymore. So let's say the church, whatever denomination, says, we're just going to pass and sell this building or whatever. What would happen there?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, with the zoning amendment, the zoning ordinance, a property owner could come in and ask for an overlay district to be applied to the property. So outside anything other than that, there's really nothing in place. I can't tell you exactly what could happen, because you have to put in policies to protect properties. Right now, the policy that you have in front of you is a zoning amendment. And so that zoning would have to be applied to that property in order for the HRC to kick in and help preserve it. But aside from that, having the CLG status and having access and having a preservation planner that you have, and this actually goes back to something that Chuck Scalise told me a very long time ago. He's like, it would be great to have an available resource to ask specific questions. So you're going to have they're going to have access to a preservation planner to say, what can we do with this building? What makes the most sense? How do we even start a National Register nomination? And you have now, you're going to have the CLG in place that if you need some funding, you have the potential, you have a place where you could go get funding to help with those things. So there's different things that can happen, but it's not going to happen overnight. That's why the HRC is going to be so vital for you, Kathy, is if you want to go, it depends on how far you want to take it, but at least you're going to have people in place that are resources immediately for property owners. I think there could be other things that I'm not thinking of, but I think that covers what you have in place now. So it doesn't, tomorrow doesn't, you're a dramatic change in the face of Erie. There's still work to be done. And that's why we wanted to build it in a way that we thought was sustainable by giving you access to resources, access to people. So again, it's all about the people. And then the policies, starting policies that will help protect some of these properties. But it doesn't happen overnight.
Kathy, one thought I have about your question is, I think throughout our nation, we're having the same problem everywhere. There's schools that aren't being used any longer, historic schools, historic churches, and what can we do? And again, a lot of it is it's really all about money and finding a reuse. We can't just preserve all these buildings without the funds and without a reuse, a function. So it's a challenge everywhere. But definitely the HRC committee would be able to maybe give some ideas and some thoughts. And if there is a building that is going that will be not used any longer and has significance, then the HRC, Preservation Erie, they can all be kind of brought in and brainstorm on some ideas and what could possibly be done, possibly find financial resources, who knows. So yeah, I wish I had a definite answer, because we've already tore down many historic buildings in Erie. You look at the building or the book Lost Erie, there are so many buildings that were torn down in the city. It's really unbelievable what we've torn down, and it's really been torn down for so-called progress, but I don't think we've progressed.
Mm-hmm. Let's say I've been willed a historic, like a generational house, and it is very architecturally unique. It would be historic, but I don't have the means to restore it. Would there be a place where I could go? Would that toolkit help to get me money to restore my house if it were deemed historical?
Any thoughts?
So Kathy, I think that's a great question. I think as the city builds out its preservation program, it certainly needs to look at resources that will best serve property owners. So the toolkit is just one, and the toolkit is really meant as an informational guide, so it can provide guidance. Well, I guess it depends on, we want the toolkit to be built in partnership with the neighborhoods, so that what the toolkit ends up being is the kind of the instructional or guidebook that the neighborhoods want to see. But I would say something else that the city could consider, as it broadens its historic preservation program, or other resources for property owners. Other municipalities do create different incentive programs and/or grant programs that serve property owners that own historic resources in locally designated historic districts. I think without a doubt, multiple conversations need to be had about what those resources look like. And without a doubt, a couple of them should have dollar figures by them. But that's, again, that's just my opinion.
That's going to be Melinda, you're right. That's going to be the work of the HRC. We had talked about it having access to local dollars specifically for historic preservation. It would be a huge step. And you've got an HRC who's going to put that in a work plan and say, we're going to find a grant, we're going to create a local revolving loan fund, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. But that's essentially where it starts. Inevitably, though, Kathy, a property owner who has got a building has got to have they've got to if it's a historic building or if it's not historic, there's got to be resources to help them maintain it. So that's, if you want to earmark just historic buildings, that's one way you can do it. Or, they're going to have resources no matter what. But if you want to really guide them to historic preservation properties, having incentives, like Melinda said, that are specifically for historic preservation is going to be critical. And those incentives could come in a number of different ways and look very different. So still yet to come on that, Kathy. And that'll be, well, I guess not your job once because you're leaving us here, unless you've applied to be on the HRC at some point in the future. But it'll be the job of City Council. But you certainly could be an advocate, Kathy, once you go back into
I like historic buildings. I do.
So we might see you out there.
Thank you very much.
Bill, any other, for Kathy's question, any other thoughts that you have? I know there's been a lot of great answers here to try to answer her question. I know we don't have the absolute answer. Any thoughts here, Bill? I'm sure you heard the question many times.
Yeah, I honestly, I think, Melinda and Kathy have covered it. I really do not believe it's possible to overstate the importance of having a person within the city who will pick up the phone when someone has a question about these kinds of things. Having that qualified staff in the building who can help guide people to resources that already exist, possibly, and then helping the HRC develop. And this is where the preservation planning comes in. And it's like anything else. If you want to incentivize certain kinds of behaviors or certain kinds of development opportunities, those are policy decisions that the city is perfectly free to make. But you've got to plan for these things, and these incentives do exist. They just need to be kind of organized and collated and put in place in a way that everybody feels comfortable expending. Kathy has said it many times this evening. This is just the start. The hard work comes up, but the direction is perfect. But these things do exist, and you can take advantage of them.
Thank you, Bill. Any other
Thank you.
questions? Thank you, Kat, for that question. Any other questions from council?
Hello, guys. Jim Winarski here. Really no questions other than just kudos to the extent of, as one who is not a forte when it comes to historic preservation, I appreciate the effort put forward to doing this. There is a lot of beautiful buildings in our town that we have lost, and there's still a lot remaining. And I appreciate between Kathy and David seeing the foresight to try to preserve what we have. And as council member, council person, I would be more than honored to help keep some of this a reality. But once again, I appreciate the effort that has been put into this, and anything I can do, I'm there for you guys. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Jim. Any other council questions? Council member questions? Mayor Schember, any thank you for being at the session tonight. Any thoughts or comments or questions from you? And again, thank you for helping making this happen.
It was easy for me to tell you guys to do this. You guys did all the hard work, and I really do appreciate it. This was very impressive where we've gotten to in just 2 short years, and I look forward to us continuing to move this forward. So thanks to everybody here for all that you did. I really appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
I do have one other question. This is for Melinda. Are you getting syrup from those trees behind you, or what's going on over there?
Yes, these lovely trees hang in my kitchen on a regular basis. They were painted by a local artist out of Girard.
Okay.
We got to have some pancakes.
That's
All right.
right.
council members, I do have something like a takeaway from this, is that I think we might be able to use this model for some other thorny issues. I'm been thinking about it, and I don't know that we don't have to talk about it tonight because we have all the experts here on preservation, but I think it's a way to bring in the kind of expertise that, you know, as part-time council members, we don't have expertise in certain areas. And I think being able to tap into staff on at City Hall and others who are willing to give their time. And I know how long, you know, this had, you know, these meetings were going on and how much work you've done. So just keep that in mind. I have some one specific idea where it might work, but I think we can learn from this experience. And Kathy Rosick, I think it was really important when you talked about not everybody always agreeing, but, you know, talking it out is a great model. So I think we will benefit in more than just historic preservation from the work that has been started here. I don't want to say completed, because I think that was also a really good point. It's the start of where we're headed, not the end.
Great comments. Michael Keys, any questions from you, or any thoughts?
Not at this point.
Okay, great. Okay. Any final questions before we call it an evening? Or comments?
This is Renee. I would just add, I agree with Liz. And I think the work of the task force, you know, the work that you've all done is incredible, what you've gotten done in less than 2 years. And it's a testament to how well the new process that we designed for appointing people to authorities, boards, and commissions and task forces works. Because what we did, you know, 2 years ago was put out a public call for applicants, and we asked for people with specific skill sets that they could bring to the table and help us to figure out, you know, what to do next. And worked with, you know, the mayor's office and city council worked together to identify this task force. And, you know, the results are just amazing. So I want to thank you all personally, and I look forward to continuing this work. So thank you.
Thank you, Renee, and thank you for the process that you put together for this, and also the process that you're working with us on the authorities and boards. That's a lot of work, and we really appreciate all your efforts and everyone else that's helped you in these efforts. Well, if that's all the questions, I think that's it. I appreciate everyone's work on this. I appreciate everyone attending the meeting tonight. You know, again, we're always looking for input. And again, the HRC will need to continue to have input. And I mentioned this earlier, I forgot who I was talking to, but I think maybe once the historic review commission is created, I think we have a council liaison to make sure and keep up with the group and keep connected to the council. So I think that's it. I thank everybody. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for putting this together. Thank you for all your hard